What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host, Ethan Smith, who does the most, and I hope you all are having a phenomenal Tuesday, January 25th. And yesterday, the players and the owners met once again in the CBA. They are meeting once again today, and lots to talk about when it comes to CBA negotiations. Will we be getting baseball without missing games, or are we going to miss games? What did the players and the owners talk about yesterday, and why are they meeting again today, and why that could be very positive for us not to miss baseball? But at the end of the day, also, are the players and the owners going to get what they want on both sides, and is real progress being made, or what kind of game are we going to see in 2022 if we do see it? Of course, we are joined by Gary Morgan, as we usually are on Mondays. We came at you a day late this week. All good, though, because we still got Gary here. And as you see at the bottom, if you are on YouTube, thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day. Every single day, you can listen on YouTube, Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts. And with all that said, it's going to be a very fun episode today with Gary Morgan, and we are going to get right into it.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And of course, everyone, welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am your host, Ethan Smith. I almost said co-host here for a second. Good God. I mean, with how much Gary's on this podcast, he might as well be a co-host of the podcast on Mondays at least. But it is Tuesday, January 25th. I had to copy Gary and have a flag now, so now we have two flags behind me. And Gary, how are you today, man? Everything going good? I assume the live fan forum, which I listened to, went very well.
Yeah, it was good. Good first shot at it. We had a good time. Met a lot of great people. We'll learn from it and move forward and make the next event stronger than this one. So.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, hey, down here in Savannah this past weekend, it dipped down below 30. I was like, oh God, what are we doing over here? But something else that didn't heat up until yesterday was the fact that the owners and the players met yesterday for longer than 7 minutes. That was kind of the biggest story, is they didn't just, meet and then walk out of the room 10 minutes later. They met for about 2 hours. Apparently, the discussions were very heated. They are meeting again today, which is part of the reason why I wanted to wait to see what everything was going on, because I know that me and you would be able to get a gauge of what the players and the owners were asking for, what was going on in terms of the conversations and all that stuff. So with everything that you've heard, what are your initial thoughts on what we've seen from the CBA, and is there progress being made, if any progress is being made at all?
There's progress being made, I think. If you want to just get the game back and didn't care about the economic stuff at all, this is a very positive thing. You're probably going to get baseball back. It seems like both sides are willing to give a little bit, and that's good. Again, if you just want baseball back, and you're not one of those people that feels like the cap has to be part of this, or they needed to put in a salary floor, or you didn't care about significant changes to how young players were paid or anything, then yeah, I think it's very positive that they've moved forward. We'll probably have baseball. We probably won't miss it much, if anything. If you're somebody that feels like the game shouldn't bother coming back if they don't make significant changes, then you're probably pretty ticked off today. It's because it looks very much so like both sides are going to just retreat and live to fight another day. It looks like minimal changes are on the way.
Yeah, and do you think, with what we've talked about before, is there a possibility that we do get that 1 or 2 year long CBA that kind of, like you mentioned, could be just basically a punt and like a retreat away from the actual problems of baseball that some people would say are major? Do you think that like that 1 or 2 year CBA is still in play?
I think it's very possible. The players gave away something I felt like they were going to hold on to pretty dearly, which was the age-based free agency. I see that they're still trying to stick with knocking a year of arbitration off. We'll see how the owners feel about that. And I also don't know, because we don't get full details because they're going to be talking again today. I'm not 100% sure what they knocked off of the players or of the owners' offer from the 7th, or the 13th. So it's kind of difficult to gauge entirely what this offer was, but it seemed to be a pretty moderate pushback.
Yeah.
I expect it to be a shorter term deal, under 5 years, I'd say. There's no way some of this stuff can just stand for that much longer, to be honest. So
Yeah, I mean, especially where you saw a lot of different stuff in sports happen this weekend. In baseball, meanwhile, this is the news that we have. There was a lot of fun stuff in sports this weekend, and this is the news that we have in baseball right now. But specifically in terms of the Pirates, I love that you brought up the arbitration, because we can get into that a little bit before we move on to the other topics. I think I remember you a while back saying that the arbitration changes are going to be very important to Pittsburgh specifically, mainly because, I mean, if you look at how Ben Cherington has set up this team, arbitration is going to be very important to keeping a lot of these guys in the future. So what is even one less year of arbitration if the owners do agree upon that? How does that affect what Ben Cherington is trying to do in terms of building the roster, per se?
I think it's a window shrinker.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just cuts back everything that you're trying to get done. It gives you one less year to play with for things. For pitching, it's game changing.
Mm-hmm.
Some pitchers, like starting pitchers especially, they may not get good until that ARB 1 year as a starter, and then you're looking at your team only having real control of that player for maybe a year before with them being a decent pitcher before they're going off somewhere else. I mean, why would you even bother trying to cultivate pitchers? I mean, just you're going to have to eventually just embrace acquiring them from elsewhere, so you might as well just do it that way. I think it's going to change the game drastically if they knock a year off. I think a good compromise would be to eliminate the Super 2 nonsense altogether. I think that's almost splitting the middle. You'd say there's 3 years of arbitration. There's no longer a situation where you could have a 4th year. And I think something like that could really go miles towards getting this agreement done. But 1 year off, and I think building a team is just completely out of the question.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, because at that point, I mean, you look at where a lot of these players sit, especially guys that are coming up this year. That would be really interesting. Like a guy like already immediately that comes to mind, like you mentioned, pitching is Roansy Contreras. They take a year of arbitration off of his contract. You might be kissing him goodbye a lot quicker than you'd want to.
Yeah, somebody like Mitch Keller, he would be entering, the territory where he's got a year left.
Yeah.
Before you have to think about moving him. That's and he hasn't done anything yet. So
yeah,
maybe he comes up and he looks good. If he does, boy, you'd really like to have that other year of arbitration, wouldn't you? So I think there's ways around it. They can talk about different negotiating structures or different payout formulas that they come up with for this stuff. I don't think that the owners will give that up. And if the players thought they could get it, they'd have gone all in, and they didn't.
Yeah. I think that's like, before we move on to the next topics and stuff about all the CBA, that's what I think I really read into when I read all this stuff, is the players, instead of, they had a ace-ace, or they have the ace-ace when they're playing poker, but they don't want to go all in. That's really what I got from this counteroffer, is they see small little tidbits they can get they'll make them happy. But at the end of the day, I don't think that they're going to really just push all the chips and put them all on the table and call it a day. Because I think they want to play baseball just as much as fans want to see baseball be played. Owners, on the other hand, have already said, and we'll get into this too, that there's already a willingness to miss games. So we'll get into that later as well. But before we continue with all this wonderful off-season baseball talk, today's episode, of course, is always brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar, of course, is the best tasting protein bar on the planet. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your resolution because they taste amazing and you'll want to eat them. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 15 grams of protein. And even if you're not a huge fan of working out or doing something like that in terms of all that like stuff that involves in working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. There's so many flavors to choose from coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, and mint brownie, and many more. In fact, Built Bar is always coming out with new limited time flavors, so check them out now at BuiltBar.com. And when you go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCK15 and you will receive 15% off of your next order when you invest in the best protein bars on the planet. So going back to the other things that were talked about, revenue sharing, service time, arbitration, all that good stuff. Did I miss anything? Because I was looking through everything and pretty much went through like 5 different articles, and those are the 3 main takeaways that I saw. I'm not sure if I missed anything else, though.
I don't think you missed anything that was reported.
Okay.
I also think what was reported was very intentional. So we'll see
Very
what
true.
actually happens. I don't think that we have a full picture of what they are looking for yet here. I just think we got the nice things they wanted to talk about, and if you really want to take a positive away from it, you take the fact that they're actually talking.
Yeah.
They're actually talking again today. Now, for all we know, too, like we're sitting here, we have positive vibes and everything. The owners could after today just be like, yeah, no, we don't like this at all, and push back from them, and we could be sitting here for another 2 weeks wondering what's going to happen, waiting for the owners to come back with their next proposal. This is just so ebb and flow. I hate trying to decide what's going to happen. I had somebody last night ask me, so are we going to miss any games? I mean, like, how do I know, man? Like, to me, this is a positive step as far as, like, do you want baseball to be played this year? That's as much as I can go right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, realistically, and I mean, looking into, again, the revenue sharing and stuff that was brought up in the service time and the arbitration being the main topics, and as you already mentioned, the biggest part of all of this is the fact that they are meeting again. I don't think people realize that. No matter how the conversation went yesterday, I've heard some people say it was very heated, some people said it was like cordial for a minute and then it got heated. From all intents and purposes, I don't care if they're just having a screaming match for 2 hours, as long as they're not in a room for 7 minutes like they were the first time. I think that's the most progress that we have now seen in the CBA after what we've seen yesterday is the fact that they are meeting again the very next day after a meeting.
Yeah, I think that's
what I would say.
I think you can take from that they're talking, and like good, bad, or indifferent. If they're not talking, nothing's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd rather them, no matter what I want. I mean, I want a salary cap, full on, bloody battle salary cap. I know I'm not getting it, but talking has to happen for that too. So, there's no bad thing to take from what we've seen. If anything, I do take a little bit of comfort that the players are ready to bend a little bit already. I thought they'd probably try to remain firm a little bit longer. But as always, or as has become tradition with the players' union, they're more than happy to just give up on things for the young players. So, which is part of why they've gotten to the situation they've gotten to. If I'm the players' union, or a lot of the players that aren't being fairly represented, maybe next time I form my representative group, I don't pick a bunch of Boris contracts.
Gary has spoken, guys, because he's not wrong. He's not wrong. I will
No.
tell you that he is not wrong in the slightest. Anybody listening right now, he is not wrong. If you go look at the representatives right now for the players, I can't tell you percentage, but I could
It's
pretty
5
much.
of 8.
Yeah, 5 of 8, so that is what, 61%, I think, if I did my math. It's in the 60s. But yeah, that's some Boris representation for sure. But again, people also have to realize too that when this all started, that first that meeting on the 13th, I believe, was the first meeting they had. Correct.
Yep.
So it took them over a month to actually sit down, and talk for a grand total of 7 minutes. Now I want to put that into perspective for you because some people I don't think understand how long 7 minutes is. My average segment on this podcast with Gary is 8.5 minutes. Me and Gary's segments on Tuesdays were longer than the first meeting that the players and the owners had on the 13th. So when you're watching this episode right now, just put that in your head that they went from a timestamp shorter than the segment that me and Gary are doing right now to an hour and a half longer than this episode is going to be. So if you want to use a timetable and a very good gauge of how important this is to them progressing into something, just use that next time. And hopefully, Jeff, you're listening, or Locked On MLB coordinator, hopefully you're listening and use that because I want people to actually hear that and take it. Also, let's also remember after this weekend, too, the MLB is going to do this. I already said this, and I'm in joking mode right now. Patrick Mahomes took 13 seconds to do something. Why is it taking you 2 months? Okay? Let's also just say that, too. But, anyways, now that I got those out of my system.
I would say this is more complex than beating, a defense that decided to turn into a sponge.
It is.
But it's a complex issue. It really is.
It is.
I've made jokes before that it's like trying to negotiate Middle East peace, but they're really and truly, these are two sides that are just never going to 100% see eye to eye.
No.
Like, we've had relative labor peace in baseball, if you really want to call it that, because they haven't had a strike or a lockout in quite some time. This was coming. This was to be expected because they keep kicking these issues down the road. If they end up kicking these issues down the road again, you can expect the same issues to come back up and with more contentious next time. That's all.
Yeah. And I mean, I get the last one was 1995?
Yeah, 94, 95.
So this is the first one in my lifetime. And I'm going to be honest with you. Being in this position of being a podcast host and talking about baseball 3 times a week during this time period, don't ever want to deal with it again. And it doesn't even directly affect... It directly affects me in a way, but it doesn't directly affect how I get paid or how I do my daily life and everything. But from what I see on Twitter yesterday, and this is where I'll end off this segment before we get into the final thing, a lot of people at this point are just like, what is going on? And they have what they want, like you want a salary cap. I also do too. I'm also on the train of being young enough, I think, where I can say, okay, this is just going to come around again, like you said. It's going to come around again. And hopefully by then they'll get it through their big skulls that they need to have a salary cap like every other league in American sports. Anyways, at this point, I think a lot of people are just tired about hearing about a lockout when every other sport has, like, all these good news surrounding it. And then you have the Olympics coming up in 2 weeks and all this. Like, there's a lot of good news going on in sports right now.
Right.
Meanwhile, the MLB is this pen and the players are this pen, and they just either shift this far apart or this close. I think that's what happens tonight whenever they meet. I think they're either going to shift farther apart than they did before, or they're going to move closer and strike something that, for me and you wanting a salary cap, as you mentioned already, is not going to be good. but it'll be good for us to be able on March 31st to watch the Pirates play the St. Louis Cardinals on opening day.
Yeah, I mean, if it's March 31st, then they're not going to agree anytime soon. March 1st, maybe. But we'll see what happens. I think it's encouraging that I'm not hearing anything from Tony Clark, and I'm not hearing anything from Rob Manfred. I think the longer those two are quiet, the less argument there's really going to be.
Has Manfred said anything, like, at all during the lockout?
Yeah, he has, but he's been very quiet recently, and I'm happy about that. Tony Clark has too. But just since they've started negotiating, it's nice to see that they're just both being quiet, letting it play out a little bit, and not making any grandiose statements to the press. I'm not trying to pull anybody to their side. They're just letting this thing play out, letting the two sides negotiate. And so far, I'd have to say both sides have been relatively reasonable in their presentations. They've both given every single time that they've come to the table. That's what negotiations are supposed to be. So if they want to be adults in the room, great.
Yeah.
And if that just means that we kick the can down the road for 3-4 years, whatever, and play baseball as we have with minimal changes, hey. I liked baseball before, I'm going to like it still. Doesn't mean that I'm going to shy away from talking about the problems, but...
Yeah, fair enough. And, I mean, before we get into that final part, what I'll say as well is, at the end of the day, Gary's still going to come on here on Mondays when the season starts and still probably have something to be mad about when Mitch Keller can't control his fastball. So, at the end of the day, the CBA doesn't affect that. But... before we get into our final segment today, I want to let you guys know that if you do want to watch something play out and have money invested in it, go to betonline.ag. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today at betonline.ag and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just make sure you use our promo code LOCKEDON in all caps to get started. From the NFL playoffs, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all of the amazing offers for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. Now, I believe you already answered this question in a way because I said March 31st. So is this all enough to not miss games at all? And I will also say in the little bottom part on YouTube, if you're watching, there was a report already that there is a willingness to miss games that has already been reported and talked about. There's a willingness to miss games on the owner's part, I believe, is what I read.
Well, that's not much of a report because as soon as you lock out the players, guess what?
Yeah.
You're willing to miss games.
You're willing to miss games either way.
So, yeah, that's I don't know. I'm not even going to compare it to politics because why would I want to do that to my life?
Fair enough.
Are they willing to miss games? Sure. Do I think it's likely at this point? As long as they're talking right now and being reasonable, no. I mean, if they come out of this and nothing's scheduled, like they both walked away, slammed their hands on the table, and they're just not going to agree, this could get ugly. And if it's going to get ugly, then I think you have more of a chance of significant change to baseball. If it's not, it's going to be status quo, I think, for the most part. So that's really what it is. I can't tell you right now whether we're going to miss games or not. I'd say it's on track right now to probably be a delayed spring and start on time. But we'll have to see. You need more information to really fill in that puzzle.
My intuition says we still will somehow. I just, for some reason, something in me is saying, we're still going to miss a week or two, I think, of games.
Maybe it's because Bob Nightingale predicted that we wouldn't.
Yeah, that's probably what it is, honestly. Like, in actuality, that's probably what it is. Like, if anybody wants to say that we're not going to miss games, just pull that tweet up whenever we miss the first game of the season that's scheduled, and I'm sure he'll have a blast reading through those. Just, anyways, what I was going to get to with the whole missing games thing as well is, as you've mentioned this entire podcast, and I'm sure people chip in on their ideas and opinions as well. Missing games for fans, like as you mentioned already, can either be good or bad. It's bad because people want to watch baseball, but it could also be good in that sense because, as Gary has mentioned before, significant change could come with it. So there's basically 2 or 3 options here. You either bring the game back on time, no significant changes, bring it back a little bit off time, no significant changes, or the third option, which is the option that personally I want to see baseball just as badly as everyone else, but I'm also like you. I want to see the significant changes that come with baseball, or come with what I see and what the players probably want. You're going to miss a lot of baseball at that point, but in the long term, baseball would be a better sport. So that's why those are the options I think that are in place right now. And I would let it up to you, the listener and the viewer, to pick what option you like the most.
I mean, I just wrote a piece last week about how the salary cap came to be in the NHL. And I wrote that in large part because I don't think a lot of people understand that this stuff doesn't come without pain.
No.
And if you read it, it's up on my site, Inside the Bucks Basement. If you read that, I think you'll come away with that understanding exactly what it took, both from a reason for doing it standpoint and just utter pain. They lost an entire season. That stuff does not come easily. If you want that, that's what it's going to take in baseball. And it will if this happens 5 years from now. I can tell you right now they'll lose a season. So embrace it if that's what you want, because it's going to have to happen.
Yeah, and that also wasn't too long ago, was it, when the NHL got a salary cap? It might have been a while ago. But
2004, 2005.
Yeah, so realistically, not that long ago. I mean, 16 years ago, 17 years ago. And I would also say, for all of you people that may watch hockey, I watch hockey, not very often, but I watch it enough to know this. There's actual real parity in hockey. Not this fake parody that they like to say we have in Major League Baseball where we haven't had a repeat champion in however many years and all that other stuff. There's actual real parity in hockey ever since the salary cap came in place. I mean, the Penguins have 2 or 3 Stanley Cups, and the Blackhawks have a couple, I think, too. But you look at, the overall basis of how hockey has been now since the salary cap was instituted, and you have all kinds of different teams winning Stanley Cups and competing for one every year. Look at Montreal right now. They were in the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and now they're dead last in the entire league. I mean, that's the kind of parity I wouldn't mind having in Major League Baseball. Is I would love to just see the most random team all of a sudden with a salary cap just pop out of nowhere and get to the NLCS. I mean, how cool would it be to eventually actually see the Seattle Mariners go on a playoff run, or the Pirates, or any team like that you can think of right now, just because they won't get outspent by said team over here. I mean, it would be great. But I also don't know if you're still on this train as well, that if there's a salary cap, there also needs to be a salary floor. I kind of am, but I also...
There is no salary cap without one.
At a floor, yeah. I mean, at the
system.
end of the day, you have to have one.
It's a system. It really has to be treated as a system, or it doesn't work. You need the revenue sharing, you need the cap, you need the floor. It's the only way to make it work.
Yeah.
It makes it work for everyone, too. It makes it work for the players as well. And that's the part that people don't like to see. It actually helps the players as well. Maybe not the very top flight players, but it helps the players.
Nice. And that's all we want. That's all I really want. I think they... to not have a better word, I think they bust their ass enough to where they should be getting something at this point. But with all that said, we'll see what they say today. Oddly enough, one of the things I was going to say I didn't see in any reports yesterday, we'll probably get this stuff today, was Universal DH stuff, and
well, that was all in the owner's presentation.
Oh yeah. So.
Yeah, last week. I didn't see any pushback on things like that.
Okay.
Expanded playoffs, DH, it's all still there. Either that or it went unreported that the players disagreed with it, but I don't see any reason for that, really.
Maybe this is all just a reality TV show, and yesterday's reports were like, yeah, let's get everybody's spirits up, and then, like, up here, and then, bam, just drop all the bombs from yesterday, be like, yeah, they didn't like this. It's like, oh, yep, here we go. But with that, Gary, where can everybody find all of your work and everything that you do, and...
Well, everything I write's on InsideTheBucksBasement.com. My podcast, Pirates Fan Forum, is on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. You can find it anywhere that you find this fine show. And I'm on this show every week with Ethan, so...
Yeah, at this point.
Might as well call this my stuff, too, at this point, huh? Monday?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just Tuesday this week. Had a lot of stuff going on this weekend and yesterday. But you guys already know, you can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. You can follow Gary on Twitter at GaryMo2007. You can also follow this podcast on Twitter at Locked On Pirates. Make sure you use the hashtag #FirstListen if you're ever tagging me in anything or all that good stuff. They love to see that, and I know you guys make this podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We will be back with you tomorrow on something I know Gary definitely didn't want to talk about, the Hall of Fame stuff. That'll be very interesting. It'll just be me. It won't be anybody else. So more than likely you guys will be hearing me rant about why Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame and why he isn't. So that'll probably be what we get into tomorrow. But we will also see Gary next week, hopefully with some more good CBA news and maybe some actual Pirates news. There is some stuff going on, but not a lot. But at the end of the day, this is the Locked On Pirates podcast. We talk Pirates baseball January, February, March, the whole damn year. We talk Pirates baseball or baseball in general. Guys, thank you for tuning in as always. And until next time, I will see you on the flip side.